The Butterflies and Moths of Teneriffe, by A. E. Holt White. Preface. When the author left England in the autumn of 1892 for a winter's sunshine in Teneriffe, it was by no means her intention to write on the Lepidoptera of that island. Soon after her arrival, however, she was struck by two things: the want of any sort of interesting outdoor occupation, other than somewhat desultory riding expeditions experienced by her companions in exile, and the absence of any account of the Lepidoptera of the Canary Islands, which would enable collectors to name their specimens. It is her hope that the present publication may be, at least to some extent, the means of remedying these deficiencies. To a detailed description of the Lepidoptera of Teneriffe, so far as they are at present known, an introductory chapter has been added, for the benefit of novices in the study and collection of butterflies and moths. Those for whom fresh air and a certain amount of exercise are essential can hardly find any more health-giving or light interesting occupation than the practical study of entomology. This study lends an interest to excursions which might otherwise be tedious, and leads the collector into all sorts of beautiful and picturesque unexplored nooks and corners of the island, which to the ordinary traveler are quite unknown. Many visitors hardly ever extend their wanderings farther than the carretera, the one high road in Teneriffe, and have no idea of the many beauties to be seen, or of the interest that may be found in studying the botany, as well as the entomology, of this most charming of the summer isles of Eden, lying in dark purple spheres of sea. All the species and varieties of Teneriffe butterflies, with the exception perhaps of 3, are found between the months of November and May, so that anyone staying there for the winter and spring months may procure a tolerably perfect collection, more especially as the different species found in Teneriffe are but 29, so far as is at present known, all of which are now described. The author has been fortunate enough to add 4 of these to the number previously known to exist in the island. The most complete collection of moths which came under notice is in the possession of Dr. Zarollo, of Villa Orotava, and this numbers about 70 species and varieties. 41 moths are described out of some 50 which were collected and studied by the author, and a list of 21 others, chiefly small and of little interest to the amateur collector, is appended. Almost all the facts and particulars relating to the life history of the Lepidoptera are the result of the personal experience of the author, who is also responsible for the drawings from which the illustrations have been reproduced. It is believed that the Lepidoptera of the other 6 islands are largely similar to those of Teneriffe. See Appendix A. The author desires to offer her best thanks to Señor Don Ramón Gómez, of Porto Orotava, for his kindness and courtesy in placing his large collection of Lepidoptera at her disposal for study and illustration. The Reverend O. A. Benthal has kindly given information upon specimens which he has netted and observed, and the author is also indebted to Dr. Zarollo, of Villa Orotava, who has lent 1 or 2 rare specimens for illustration. Kind assistance in naming some specimens has been given by A. G. Butler, Ph.D., FLS, FSZS, and Mr. W.F.S. Kirby, FLS, FES, of the British Museum, and Mr. Bethune-Baker, FES, has been good enough to name some of the smaller moths. AEHW. November 1893. Introductory Chapter. Many persons who know little or nothing about butterflies may be tempted to make a collection of them when they find themselves in a semi-tropical land, which yields in great profusion such beautiful creatures, whose brilliant coloring when grouped together has so pleasing an effect. To such, a slight sketch of the life of a butterfly may not be unacceptable. Butterflies and moths belong to the order Lepidoptera, or scale, winged insects. The different stages of growth of these insects are called the over, Venetian, larva, Timida, Sassion, Abanetians, Fortines, or Idea, Timida, Chrysalis, Presilis, or Chrysalis, butterfly. The body consists of 3 parts: the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. There are 2 pairs of wings, the upper and the lower, or, as they are generally called, the fore and the hind wings. These are covered with a downy substance, like feathered scales, which are most beautiful when seen under a microscope, and very much in form. It is in these that the coloring matter resides, which gives the beautiful color to different species. Lepidoptera have 6 legs. In some, however, the forelegs are so short and inconspicuous that the insect almost appears to have only 4 legs. The proboscis or trunk is a long, flexible double tube through which the animal sucks the juices of the flowers. It is curled up under the thorax like a watch spring and expands at will. It varies much in length, both in moths and butterflies. The antennae are the horns or feelers of the insect and are believed to contain the organs of smell. They vary much in size and thickness and are most important as regards the classification of the different species of Lepidoptera. They are generally of considerable length in a butterfly, increasing in thickness at the end till a sort of long knob is formed. Moths are distinguished from butterflies by a few simple characteristics which can be seen at a glance. First, with some few exceptions, of which the hummingbird hawk moth is one, moths are always found on the wing at dusk or at night, whereas butterflies take their flight by day. Secondly, the moth either folds its wings close to its side or else spreads them out flat. The butterfly, when at rest, as a rule keeps its wings straight up, face to face, or else keeps up a fluttering motion, continually putting them in this position. Thirdly, the body of a butterfly is small at the waist, while that of the moth is larger and of a more uniform size. The antennae are the most distinctive feature, those of the moth being fine and long and having no knob at the end. In some species they are short and finely feathered the whole length, terminating in a sharp point. This feature is generally distinctive of the male sex, the rufescens moth being an example. The skipper family have antennae like the butterfly, but the body of a moth. The butterfly or moth lays its egg, not more than a pin's head in size, on that particular plant or tree on which the caterpillar, that it will shortly become, feeds. These look of much the same form to the naked eye, but when magnified, they are seen to be of many different shapes, some being conical, others round, angular, and many-sided. On-CT, RCT are various, but most frequently they are yellow, green, or greenish-white. A microscopic examination of these will prove both interesting and instructive. The caterpillars, as soon as they emerge from the eggs, the time of which varies with different species, at once commence to eat, and continue to do so voraciously till they turn to the pupa state. This being the case, they must be constantly supplied with fresh food when kept in captivity, once certainly, if not twice a day. There are, however, 1 or 2 varieties which cease to eat, and lie in a semi-dormant state for some time before taking the form of a chrysalis. The caterpillar of the Exoletta moth is an example of this. The greatest cleanliness, together with good ventilation, freshness of food, and regularity in feeding, are essential to keep all caterpillars in health. If we watch the creature feeding, we shall observe that it takes the leaf edgeways between its 2 forefeet, ceaselessly moving its head up and down, and taking a large piece of leaf at each mouthful. Some moth caterpillars are night feeders, and so hide themselves under the thickest leaves on which they feed, or else bury themselves in the earth till night comes again. Cannibal caterpillars are to be found on the potato plants. They are of rather a reddish-brown color, from 1.5 inches to 2 inches in length. The author was not very fortunate in rearing them to the moth stage. It is said that they should be fed on the young larvae, and possibly the specimens had caterpillars to feed on that were too old. There is room for interesting experiments in Teneriffe on 1, if not more, species. Many of the caterpillars are most beautifully colored and marked. Those of the hawk moth are usually the most brilliant, but, at the same time, they are most delicate and require the greatest attention as regards freshness of food, ventilation, and cleanliness. Some larvae shed their skins twice only, others molt 7 times, but the majority effect this change 4 or 5 times. It is rather a laborious process for them, and sometimes proves fatal. During the process they cease feeding, but commence again with renewed vigor after the change has taken place. The colorings and markings of the new coat often vary from those of the one cast off, and an experienced entomologist can tell the age of the caterpillar by the color and texture of the skin in many varieties. When the creature has passed through the larva and arrived at the pupa state, it has at first a soft and tender skin, through which parts of the future butterfly can be clearly seen. This soon hardens, however, and forms a case impervious to rain or other atmospheric influences. Before taking the pupa form, some caterpillars creep into holes and crevices of walls and old buildings. Others bury themselves in the earth. Some envelop themselves in a tissue of silk, which they spin as a silkworm does, and this case is called a cocoon. Other species draw a leaf round their bodies, fastening it together with silk-like threads, and so making a complete shelter for itself. The Teneriffe caterpillar is an example of this type, being commonly found in Teneriffe on the potato plant, from the leaf of which it constructs its house. Still further varieties suspend themselves to a bough or leaf head downwards. There are other varieties which suspend themselves from the center of their bodies by silk-like threads and use much ingenuity in so doing. Many caterpillars are smooth, others rough and hairy. The hairy specimens vary much, the hair of some being soft, long and silky, others having short stubby spikes rather than hairs sparsely dispersed over the body. The hairy species, the Rufescens moth caterpillar being one, use their hairy coats as a slight cocoon, and the hairy coat also, it is said, serves as a protection from birds. At the same time, the hairs cause great irritation to the human skin if the caterpillars are handled too freely. The acrid taste of some also protects them from feathered enemies. When the insect has remained in the pupa state for a sufficient length of time, which varies according to species from a couple of weeks to a few months, the process of throwing off its skin is quickly performed. Weather has much influence on the period during which the pupa lies dormant. The Teneriffe winter of 1892-93 was particularly warm, and all specimens emerged to the butterfly stage somewhat earlier than usual. A few days before the butterfly, or moth, appears, the pupa becomes less lively, and at last splits its skin down the middle of the back, and the insect squeezes first its head and front legs through the aperture. This aperture soon enlarges, the pupa skin being very dry and giving little resistance, and the creature emerges, its legs clinging to some substance so that the wings are in a suspended position. These are quite small at first and wet, but they expand very quickly, acquire their full size, and become firm and stiff as the animal flutters and crawls about. The insect then emits a quantity of reddish fluid, and in a short time it is able to fly away. The duration of the life of Lepidoptera varies much, most species living a few days or a few weeks, but some hibernate. The flight of Lepidoptera is a very distinctive feature of the different species. Or, of the different species, the larger, such as the Plexippus, Chrysippus, and Pandora, seem to sail through the air, sometimes rising to a great height. The Cardui and Huntera have a much quicker and more jerky flight, and are troublesome to net. A great many of the large moths may be said to rush along, the convolvuli being a very difficult one to capture, and often escaping when it seems quite within the net. Taking the flight of the majority of moths and butterflies, they seem to be more active and stronger on the wing in Teneriffe than those of the same species in England. The food of Lepidoptera consists of honey which they take from the flowers, or else a moisture which exudes from trees or plants. Their food is always of a liquid form, and is sucked up through the proboscis or long tongue. The convolvuli moth hovers at dusk over flowers, inserting its very long tube into the extremity of trumpet-shaped blossoms. When forming a collection of the Lepidoptera of Teneriffe, it seems a pity that so many insects should be unnecessarily caught and destroyed, and the author would earnestly beg all lovers and collectors of the beautiful creatures to bear this in mind, as some of the rarer varieties may otherwise stand a good chance of being exterminated. The muchachos, Spanish boys, are all too eager to supply any collector with specimens for a few quartos, and bring many poor mutilated insects in the hope of finding a purchaser. A refusal to buy the much befingered and dilapidated creatures does not deter them from further pursuit, as they only endeavor to catch a greater quantity in the hope of at last getting a good specimen which will find a buyer. If collectors would only net them themselves, and not encourage the indiscriminate way in which the boys pursue them, it would greatly tend to preserve the different species. Hints and suggestions on nets, breeding cages, etc. as some difficulty is experienced in Teneriffe by persons who arrive there without already being provided with materials for collecting Lepidoptera. The description of a few useful expedients resorted to may be of service. A moderate knowledge of the Spanish language is a very useful help towards obtaining any small necessaries, but the Spanish shopkeepers are most obliging and understand quickly by the help of a very few words what is wanted. A butterfly net is one of the first requisites, so some wire must be bought at the tinsmith's, of whom there are several in Orotava. With a little instruction, he will make it into a ring about 1 foot in diameter, with a socket of tin soldered onto it. Into this socket, an ordinary walking stick can be fixed for a handle. The stick is useful to walk with over the rough ground when not required for the net, and the net can be easily carried with other necessaries one has to take on an expedition. Mosquito netting answers the purpose of green gauze for the net. Gauze is the best, however, and can be purchased in England, but not in Orotava. The mosquito netting gets soft and pliable by use, but it is best to scald it in hot water before making it into a net, so as to ensure a soft substance in which to catch the fragile creatures without injuring their wings or plumage. The net should be made round at the bottom and be about 1 yard in length. Purchase 1 yard of mosquito netting, it is sold 2 yards in width, and the quantity which is not used for the net serves to cover the breeding cages, which are about to be described. Another essential is a breeding cage for caterpillars, and, as several are required if many butterflies and moths are to be reared, the following plan is a good one to adopt. Procure a small wooden box, about 6 or 8 inches long, or even larger, and about 3 inches deep. Empty chocolate boxes are serviceable for the purpose. In each corner, fix upright, with a couple of tacks, a piece of cane about 8 or 10 inches in length. Over this stretch, a piece of mosquito netting, tacking it to the edge of the box all round, except at one side, where it should be left loose, so as to be fastened down at will with 2 or 3 stout pins. The loose side can then be raised to give the caterpillars fresh food, and to remove dirt or refuse. Breeding cages that one can purchase at any naturalist's outfitters are made very handily of wood, zinc, and glass, and of course are very durable, but those described above last well for a season and have the merit of being of no expense. To procure good moths and butterflies with bright and uninjured plumage, it is best to rear them from the caterpillar stage of development, but as all varieties are not easily found, the net is usually the collector's first resource. Raising caterpillars from the egg is a very interesting process, but it is rather tedious, and requires more knowledge and experience to meet with success than finding the insects in the next stage of development and keeping them till they reach the perfect state. When starting for a day's ramble butterfly hunting, one of the great charms seems to be the delightful uncertainty about the sport which may fall to one's lot, so it is as well to provide for all contingencies, taking the net, poison box or bottle, a tin for caterpillars, which should be perforated at the top, a nest of glass-topped pillboxes for specimens of any butterfly or moth one may wish to take home alive, and envelopes for butterflies when killed in the net. The latter may be made of notepaper, by cutting a long square of paper and folding it in a triangular shape and then turning up the edges of 2 sides so as to make a little bag. Butterflies travel well placed flat in these envelopes and should be set directly home as reached. A small cork collecting box is also useful, together with some insect pins, in case one gets many specimens, some of which can be pinned into the box preparatory to setting them on the return home. Insect life is so prolific in Teneriffe, and one sees so many strange and curious animals, that anyone really interested in entomology is certain to find specimens to bring home, such as the praying mantis, found frequently on half-dead thistles in barrancos, and on shrubs the many varieties of large grasshopper, and the gorgeous colored dragonflies flitting about and killing butterflies in a rather wholesale manner. All these insects are of such interest that it is as well to be provided with various appliances for carrying them on the homeward journey. As sunshine and brightness prevail in Teneriffe during the winter months, it is not necessary to choose a likely day, as in England, in order to have a good day's sport. Indeed, there seem to be more butterflies on the wing on the days that are not too brilliant. On the very sunshiny days, the butterflies are about in the greatest quantities in the early morning, retiring at noon to more shady or sheltered spots. A nice, quiet, sheltered little dell, covered with rough herbage and cactus by the sides of the barrancos, is a very favorite spot. The barrancos are dry riverbeds, sometimes of great extent, with large boulders and rocks thrown about in wild confusion. Generally speaking, they are intersected by a path, up which one can ride or walk, leading up the mountains to different villages and hamlets. Occasionally, during the winter months, a great quantity of water runs down the barrancos, but the supply only lasts a short time, soon drying up and leaving a few small stagnant pools here and there, and these in turn soon disappear. Walking over much ground is hard work, as the country is steep and rough with stones and rocks. I advocate strongly the use of mules, as being the most pleasant mode of locomotion. They are so sure-footed and easy in their quick walk that one feels far less tired after a long day's excursion on muleback up the mountains and barrancos than by any other mode of locomotion. The muleteer carries all necessaries, together with luncheon, and one is able to stop and alight where fancy dictates or butterflies abound. Mules can be hired at Villa Orotava, the charge being $1 or 5 pesetas for a short day. Beyond this, a small gratuity to the muleteer makes him pleased and happy. There are many completely uncultivated spots up the mountains, intersected by little bypaths along which the mules can walk. These are perfect Eldorados for moths and butterflies, and one must be busy with net and poison box, not forgetting the tin case in which to place larvae for the breeding cage, and especially remembering to carry home some of the plant upon which they feed. Some of these places are so rough and thick with bramble growth and vegetation of like nature that walking is really hard work. The lava rocks are sharp, and the numerous grasses with hooks, such as the amour stas, 8 = certain, such as the amour sec, together with the thorns of the prickly pear, make a formidable barrier for the pedestrian. There are, however, no poisonous snakes to dread, no biting animals of any sort larger than flies, so that the inconvenience of the thorns and pricks is all that need be feared. On returning home from the expedition, all the various wants and requirements of the specimens must be attended to. The caterpillars have to be put into breeding cages, which should have been already prepared for them. Different kinds which feed on the same plant may be put together. Care must, however, be taken not to put any cannibal species, such as the armigera, among the others. Also, moth and butterfly larvae should be kept separate. For moth larvae, it is essential to have some fine earth previously baked to destroy the ants, which are very troublesome, spread on the bottom of the box, from 1 to 2 inches thick. The caterpillars bury themselves in this when they have finished feeding, making for themselves a slight mold of earth, welded together with silk-like threads. Different species, however, vary in their mode of procedure, some making very slight, and others more pronounced cocoons, while yet others make quite an oval shell, choosing only the finest grains of earth with which to construct their houses. It is said that some sort of dried leaf answers the purpose of earth, and is less likely to injure the moth's plumage, but the former mode has been found to be perfectly successful. Place the plant on which the animal is to feed in a moist pot of earth, or in a bottle of water, so as to keep it fresh. If the latter mode is adopted, care must be taken that the animal does not drop into the water, so it is best to choose a wide-mouthed bottle, putting a bung with a hole in it as a stopper and inserting the plant through the hole into the water. The earth should be kept slightly moist, and many people give caterpillars a gentle spray of water occasionally to take the place of dew, which they would have in their natural state. It is a good plan to let them have a little of the early morning sun upon them, as it serves to keep them in health, but they cannot bear the sun of midday. For butterfly larvae, the same procedure is required, except that only a thin sprinkling of earth is wanted at the bottom of the box for the purposes of cleanliness. When the larva of the butterfly is about to develop to its pupa state, it readily crawls up the box and netting, suspending itself from the top head downwards, and the netting serves as a good foothold for the butterfly when it appears. If possible, the chrysalides should remain as they place themselves until the next stage of development is reached, because, unless they are able to expand their wings while in this position, deformity is likely to ensue. The majority of butterfly chrysalides are naked, and of an angular form, some being remarkable for the brilliancy with which they are spotted with gold and silver. The Vanessa family is an example of this, the Vulcania and Huntera being especially brilliant. Caterpillars of the skipper family make a web-like covering of silk for the reception of the chrysalides, but there has been hitherto only one species of this family found in Teneriffe. Many caterpillars of various kinds kept during the winter months were very subject to the raids of the ichneumon fly. This fly lays its egg on the larva, and it is not easily perceived on the animal unless looked for through a magnifying glass. The caterpillar lives on and seemingly thrives, but after it is turned to its pupa state, the fly develops, and a fine ichneumon fly appears in the breeding cage instead of the expected butterfly. There are large and small varieties of this fly, the former laying only 1 or 2 eggs on the caterpillar, the latter a great many, and they emerge from the chrysalis in corresponding numbers. 1. After 1, the only remedy seems to be to inspect all larvae through a magnifying glass and to reject any infected specimens. Pieris chiaranthe is particularly liable to this fly. The red fungus found on the Tithomali moth caterpillar is another disease, but is not very common. SAD, 1 People Sections, is mentioned by Gilbert White in his Natural History of Selborne, v. Observations on Insects and Vermes, p. 519, ed. 1813, ed. 1813, b. Caterpillars should be handled as little as possible while removing them to their fresh food. As a rule, they crawl onto the fresh supply at once, but in the case of very small specimens, a camel hairbrush should be used to lift them from one place to another. Many of them emit a fluid when touched. The Tithomali spits out a quantity of green fluid when disturbed. Butterflies generally seem to be found in the greatest numbers in the barrancos early in the year. When, however, the fields get green and vegetation increases, they desert the barrancos and take more to the fields and country, with the exception of the Argynnis lithonia, a variety which more particularly frequents barrancos. The time of appearance of all species takes place from 2 to 4 weeks later, the higher they are up the mountains. The south part of the island is not so fertile a place for Lepidoptera as the north. Perhaps this is owing to the more sparse vegetation on that side. Many species are found inland, while some are peculiar to the coast. The heights and localities in which all the different kinds are found have been indicated as far as possible in the description of the various species. Killing and setting butterflies and moths, relaxing specimens, etc. Butterflies, when netted, can be easily killed by a prolonged sharp pinch under the thorax before being taken from the net, and do not need to be put into a poison box. The pinch should be given between the finger and thumb, the wings of the insect being kept in an upright position. Moths must be put into a poison bottle or box and left there from 12 to 24 hours. Some varieties die much quicker than others. Various kinds of poison are used for the boxes and bottles, but cyanide of potassium seems most generally approved of by entomologists. To catch moths, many people use the sugaring process. A mixture made of beer, rum, and coarse sugar or treacle, boiled till it becomes thick like treacle, is placed at night on the trunks of trees or on flowers, and a lamp is placed near the sugared plants. True votaries of sweetness and light, the moths alight on the sticky mixture, and, becoming stupefied with the beer and rum, as a rule fall to the ground, where they can easily be caught or netted. Setting boards are made of strips of wood about 1 foot or 18 inches in length, varying in width according to the size of the specimen one wishes to pin out on it. These boards are covered with sheet cork, having a groove down the middle to receive the body of the insect. Some boards have a flat, others a slightly curved surface, and these are covered with white paper. English entomologists generally use curved boards, but foreign collectors prefer the flat setting boards. These latter seem somewhat preferable. The good appearance and value of a collection greatly depend on the setting, and for this reason much care and patience is required. The butterfly should be taken between the thumb and finger of the left hand, and an insect pin inserted in the middle of the thorax, bringing the point slightly sloping backwards and out at the legs. And having selected a board suitable in size to the specimen, it should be pinned exactly in the middle of the groove, the body being kept quite straight. Two narrow strips of paper, not more than 1/8 of an inch in width, are now required to fasten down the two wings on each side of the groove. Let each strip be pinned in front of the two forewings, holding the end of a strip in the left hand, then very gently place the wings, first the fore and then the hind wing, in position, bringing them forward with a long pin, the point being placed on the wings as near the body as possible in the right hand. At the same time, the strip of paper which is being held in the left hand is gently lowered and fastened with a pin immediately below the hind wing. Great care must be taken not to injure the plumage by touching it. A second strip of paper is now necessary on each side to pin down the outer edges of the wings, but the first two strips are the most important ones, as they keep the wings in position, and the latter may be very easily added. The antenna should be straightened and placed under the first two strips of paper, or placed in position by two pins. The paper is fastened along the boards, fixing as many specimens as its length will permit. Many persons use triangular pieces of card as braces for the butterfly, fixing one or more on each wing, but the strips of paper seem somewhat easier to arrange, and damage the plumage even less than the card, though when either method is adopted, the specimen ought not to be damaged in the least. In making a perfect collection of butterflies, 3 specimens should be set up of every variety, the male, the female, and one set with the underside uppermost. It is not usual to set moths the reverse way. Butterflies must be left on the board to stiffen for 10 days or a fortnight. After that, they can be removed to the store box. Moths with large bodies take longer in drying and must be left for 3 or 4 weeks. By touching the end of the body of a specimen gently with a pin, it can easily be seen whether it is firm and stiff enough to be removed to the case. If butterflies and moths are not set soon after death, they become stiff and would be useless, but there are several modes of relaxing them, and it may be useful to give a description of the process which is generally adopted. Procure a marmalade pot or earthenware jar, into which put 3 inches of sand. Pour on the sand enough water to wet it thoroughly without allowing the water to appear on the surface. It is as well to put a small quantity of carbolic acid with it. The insects to be relaxed should be pinned on to a thick piece of cork, the cork resting on the top of the sand. Close the mouth of the jar with a piece of glass or something which will make it airtight. A few hours is often enough to relax specimens, but if left longer they must be carefully watched, as they very soon become moldy. To keep the insects free from mites, naphthalene must be freely used in the store boxes and cases. Camphor is used by some persons, but naphthalene is a far more efficacious preventative of the ravages of parasites. In packing specimens already set for England, store boxes will hold a great number if the specimens are judiciously placed one over the other in a sloping manner, great care being taken that they do not touch each other, as the slightest rubbing spoils the plumage. Don Ramon Gomez, chemist, of Porto Orotava, Teneriffe, has all necessaries for the collector, such as setting boards, store boxes, pins, etc., etc., and is most obliging in packing specimens for England and giving any advice. Many interesting objects for the naturalist and antiquarian may be seen in his large collection. His guanche remains being especially deserving of notice. Part 1. Butterflies. Purus Chiranthe. Plate 1, Fig. 2. This is a large, creamy white butterfly peculiar to the Canary Islands. It is found in some numbers on and near the coast of Teneriffe. From April to September, the time of its appearance, however, varies somewhat in different years. The larva is smooth and has a ground color of gray, finely dotted over with black spots. There is a yellow stripe on the back and along each side. It feeds on the nasturtium gregariously, and the pupa attaches itself, head downwards, to a wall near the plant. The female butterfly, the underside of which is illustrated, has a long uneven blotch of black on the surface of the forewings. The male has none. The upper surface of both sexes is cream white, with a black apical patch on the forewings. The undersides have the long black blotch as seen on the surface of the female, and the ground color of both is yellow, finely sprinkled with black dots. The measurement across the wings varies from 2.5 to 3.5 inches. It is best to procure the larva to obtain good specimens, But the ichneumon fly is such an enemy to this species that great disappointment will probably be experienced in the rearing if the caterpillars are not well examined before being placed in the breeding cages. Pyrrhus wallastoni. Plate I, Fig. 1. This butterfly is allied to the Teneriffe, but is a distinct variety, only recently met with in this island. Mr. Butler, of the British Museum, has named and fully described this insect, which has hitherto only been found in Madeira, but is now for the first time enumerated in the list of Teneriffe Lepidoptera. It is somewhat smaller than the Teneriffe, measuring not more than 2.5 inches in expanse. The reverses of the female, which is illustrated, and of the male, are of a gray tinge, in place of the rather bright yellow shade of the Teneriffe, sprinkled over with fine black dots. The apical patch is also gray, and both sexes have long black spots on the forewings. The upper surface is cream white, and the female has 2 distinctly marked long black spots on the forewings, the male having none. The black apical markings are similar in both sexes, and a small black spot is seen on the inner margin of the hind wing of both male and female. There are no observations to record on the caterpillar and pupa, as the specimens of the fly, one of which is illustrated, were netted, but very possibly larvae may be found gregariously with the Teneriffe, in like manner to the Calero and Atalanta, or the Plexippus and Chrysippus. The specimens taken were netted about 500 feet above the sea. Pieris rapa. The common English variety, small cabbage white. The forewings are creamy white, with an irregular blackish mark at the tip. The male generally has a black spot in the middle of the wing, the female having 2, and both sexes have 2 black spots on the underside, which is of a yellowish color, thickly dotted with small black atoms. All the markings vary greatly, however. The larva is dull green, with a yellowish stripe on its back and yellow dots on the side. It generally feeds on the cabbage, but is found also on the nasturtium. It is very common and may be found everywhere from February to October. Pyrrhus daploides. This butterfly resembles the rare English specimen Bath white. It is very common in some years, after 2 windstound, and found in most localities from February to October. It seems mostly to frequent rough, poorly cultivated fields. The wings are white, the forewings having a large black spot in the middle, and being bordered with black encircling distinct white spots. The markings of the underside show through on the hind wings, and these have black markings on the edges in the female. The underside has a ground color of sage green, freely spotted with white. The markings show considerable variety, some being marked much more heavily than others. It measures across the wings from 2 to 2.5 inches. The caterpillar, which is grayish-green, has yellow stripes on the back, and feeds generally on cabbage. The butterflies are much pursued and destroyed by dragonflies. 2. During the winter of 1892–1893, it was met with in great numbers. Euclo, Charlonia, Donziel. Plate 1, Fig. 4, Fig. 4. This butterfly was seen near Orotava, 500 feet above the sea level, during the first week in May by the author, who, however, was not fortunate enough to secure a specimen. Several specimens of this species, which is rare in the Canary Islands, have been netted in the island of Fuerteventura, and 2 of them have been presented by Mr. E. H. Hodges of Rugby to the British Museum, from which the illustration has been drawn. It measures in expanse about 1.5 inches. The general color is yellow, varying in intensity of shade in different specimens, with black apical markings on the forewings and a long black patch on the center of the upper margin. A full account of this interesting insect is to be found in Anne. Sock. Auntie. R. 80. R. 1842. P. R. 1842. P. 1. But hitherto it has not been recognized in Teneriffe as a species belonging to the island. It is found in North and West Africa. Aporia craddock-gui. This specimen is the rare English black-veined white butterfly. It has undoubtedly been netted in Teneriffe, though it has not been personally observed by the author. In flight, its similarity to other white specimens is so great that it may often be passed unnoticed. It is said to be local and uncertain in appearance, being seen chiefly during the summer months about the fields and gardens. The wings are entirely of a white cream color and are alike on both sides, the veins being black and the forewings having some dusky spots on them. The caterpillar is black, thickly sprinkled with whitish hairs and with a reddish-yellow stripe running along each side. It feeds on various fruit trees and is believed to be very destructive. Rhodocera cleobule. Plate I, Fig. 3. Fig. 3. This finely colored and beautiful butterfly resembles the English brimstone, but is quite a distinct variety, being of squarer form and having no decided point at the angle of the hindwings. It is peculiar to the islands. The male is a most brilliant sulphur yellow, the forewings being of a deeper shade than the hind ones. The hindwings have a deep orange spot about the center. The female differs from the male in being of a much paler shade of yellow, with quite a tinge of green all over it. It also has a small orange spot on the forewings in addition to that on the hindwings. Both wings have red markings round them on the outer edge, which form an almost interrupted fine line of color. The underside resembles the upper but is paler. The antennae are short and thick, with a reddish tinge which becomes deeper at the knob. It is found from January to June in most localities, on and at a little distance from the coast. Gardens and fields seem somewhat favored, but it is by no means common anywhere. There seem to be several broods between the months mentioned above, but the larva and pupa have not been observed. Coleus edusa. Plate I, Fig. 5, female. This specimen is the English clouded yellow. The wings measure from 2 to 2.5 inches across, the female being somewhat larger than the male. Both sexes have the same broad black margin on the fore and hind wings, but the male differs from the female in having no irregular yellow spots marked on these black borders, which are seen in the female. The hind wings of the female are of a somewhat darker shade of yellow, tinged with green than those of the male, and both sexes have a bright orange spot about the middle of the wing. Beneath, both sexes are alike, the forewings being of a lighter orange with several irregular black spots and a margin of greenish yellow. The hind wings are of a uniform green color, with a red ringed spot about the center of each, accompanied by a silver-like dot in the middle. It is found in quantities in most localities, from the coast to the pine forests, from February to November. The caterpillar is green, with a stripe of yellow and white, having several orange dots on it. It is a miscellaneous feeder, preferring, however, leguminous plants. Coleus v. Hellas. Plate 1. Fig. 6, 6. A pale yellowish-white variety of the former specimen. It is very rare and is found in May and during the summer months, though very seldom met with in England. Wine. Idotus. Don Ramon Gomez has one in his collection of this size. The markings vary considerably, and the bright orange spot in the center of the hindwing, as seen in the illustration, is replaced occasionally by a pure white one. The male has hitherto not been found. 3. In the summer of 1892, many were taken. Lichena bitica. A commonly found blue butterfly, measuring from 1 to 1.5 inches across the wings. It is rarely met with in England. The insect has a slender tail at the lower angle of each hindwing, surmounted by 2 black dots. The margins of both wings have a slight black or dark brown band. The undersides of both wings are of a gray-brown color, streaked and slightly spotted all over with faint white lines. On the lower angle of each hindwing, the 2 black spots on the upper side are replaced by 2 black ones dusted with silver, and surrounded by a bright orange ring which is broader at the top than at the bottom. The antennae are brown, slightly sprinkled with white. It is found on the rough fields, especially where the lupine grows, barrancos and hedgerows, between March and August. Specimens netted early in the year are not so large as those found during May and in the summer months. Lysae, na, Websiana. Plate 1, Figs, 7 and 8. 7 and 8. This is a smaller blue butterfly than that just described, measuring about 1 inch across the wings. It is peculiar to the islands and is known by some lovers of entomology as the peak blue. It is not, however, found on the peak alone, but is netted in barrancos and gardens at a much lower altitude. It frequents the pine forests in large numbers, and has been also found on the south coast of the island of Teneriffe, at Guimar, see Appendix B, so it may be fairly considered to be widely dispersed over the island. It is undoubtedly found in the greatest numbers in the elevated zone of the pine forests, where, however, owing to the extremely slippery nature of the ground, it is difficult to net. The male is of a beautiful metallic blue color, the female of a much browner blue. The upper side of the male and the underside of the female are shown in the illustrations. The forewings of the underside in both sexes are alike, being of an orange tawny color with a white uneven spot on the top margin of each wing and 5 or 6 somewhat indistinct brown spots at the outer edge, interspersed with white. The hind wings are of an ashy brown with a longitudinal, irregular silver-white line down each, both wings being minutely dotted with white. 5 or 6 brown spots, dusted with silver, are seen at the margin of the hind wings. It usually appears in March, though it has been seen at an earlier date. The larva and pupa have not hitherto been found. Lyca, na lysimon. This is the smallest specimen of blue butterfly found in Teneriffe, being not quite 1 inch in expanse. The female is rather a browner blue than the male. The coloring on the upper side is of a most beautiful uniform blue, all the wings having a margin of brown and a slight white fringe at the edges. The underside of all the wings is gray, rather freely dotted over with darker spots, encircled by grayish white. It is very commonly found on all grassy fields and lanes, and quantities flutter quickly along the grass-grown streets of Orotava from April to August. It is not an inhabitant of England, but is found in the south of France, Spain, greater part of Africa, Western Asia, and the East Indies. The caterpillar and chrysalis have not been observed. Lycana, Astarche, v. Stiva. E. Stiva. Plate I, Fig. 6, A small dark copper, the expansive wings being about 1 inch, or rather more. It is not found in England. On the upper side, on all the wings, there is a marginal band of bright copper. The forewings have a black spot about the center of each. A fringe of white edges all the 4 wings. The under widely differs from the upper side in coloring and markings. The ground color is light gray, freely dotted over with black spots encircled by white. All 4 wings have the same bright marginal copper band as seen on the upper side. The antennae are black or dark brown, finely dotted with white. It is somewhat rarely found in fields and barrancos on high ground, but may be met with in larger quantities in the pine forests. The time of its appearance is from April to September. When comparing the Teneriffe specimen of this butterfly with those of other countries at South Kensington, it was noticed that the marginal copper band was broader on the Teneriffe specimen, and it may be possible that it should be reckoned as a new variety. Polyomatus, or Chrysophanes flies, has a copper butterfly and a common English specimen, measuring from 1 to 1.5 inches across the wings. The forewings are of a bright copper red, with large square black spots distinctly marked, and an outer band of brown. The hind wings are dark brown, having a marginal copper band on the outer edge, which in some specimens is surmounted by a few blue spots. The underside of the forewings is pale copper, the hind wings being gray, with minute black or dark brown spots, and traces of a marginal band of copper. It is commonly found from February to September in most places in Teneriffe, up to the altitude of the pine forests. The larva feeds on a variety of rumex dock or sorrel. Some specimens have been found much darker in color than those described above, the difference being so great as to suggest the possibility of a distinct variety. Thecla ruby. This small butterfly is called in England the green hair streak. It is said to have been netted in the island during the summer months, and its appearance is believed to be well authenticated. The larva is green with a yellow line on the back, bordered with darker and followed by a line of pale triangular spots, and a yellow line on the sides. It lives on brambles and sea. The fly expands about 1 inch. It is of a uniform brown color above, and a uniform green below, with a row of white dots on the underside of the hind wings. Danace plexippus, formerly Archippus. Plate I, Fig. 1. The largest butterfly found in the islands, measuring from 4 to 4.5 inches across the wings. The larva is very bright in color, having transverse bands of blackish violet, gold, and white alternately. It has 4 black horns or fleshy spikes along its back, and when full-grown measures about 2 inches in length, and it is rather stout and smooth. The pupa, green when first turned, and suspending itself by the tail only, has a bright gold band halfway round its base and a series of gold spots encircling its head. Shortly before emerging to a butterfly, it turns to a dark brown. The caterpillar never suspends itself to the plant on which it feeds, but goes to some of the higher grasses near it, or it prefers still better, a mallow plant, from the leaves of which as many as 16 beautiful bright green and gold chrysalides have been seen hanging, forming quite a picture under the illumination of the glorious sun of Teneriffe. It lives and feeds gregariously on the arbol de seda, 4C, a plant bearing a very bright red and gold flower. Many specimens were reared from quite small caterpillars in the breeding cages. They were easy to keep, but especial care must be taken in providing them with fresh food, and great attention ought to be paid to ventilation, or some disappointment may be experienced in the number that died during the pupa state for no apparent reason. A little of the morning sun is beneficial to them, as they are found when in a natural state, in the most sunny localities. 4. Asclepias cuvasavica. A brood seems to emerge about every 3 months in most years, from February to September. The butterfly frequents flower gardens and fields near the coast, not often being found more than 700 or 800 feet above the sea. It is of a rich orange-tawny color, rather heavily veined with black or dark brown. All 4 wings have a broad black border, with 2 lines of whitish-yellow dots along the margin. There is a large apical patch of blackish-brown on each forewing, with 7 large yellow and white spots on the tip. There is not a great difference between the upper and the underside, except that on the latter the white marginal spots are larger, and there is more white on the black feathered body. The insect looks splendidly bright and flashing as it soars along with a steady flight from tree to tree on the carretera, and it must be quickly netted, or it soon rises out of reach. These butterflies are distasteful to birds, as also are the 3 following varieties belonging to the same family. For this reason, the family of Danaus is mimicked by butterflies of other species. The butterfly next described, Danaus crucipus, being, for instance, copied closely by several African and Indian species of butterflies, and even some moths. The Danaus plexippus is a very common butterfly in North America, and has within the last few years become widely dispersed, some specimens having been found in England in 1877, or subsequently. Danaus chrysippus. Plate IE, Fig. 2. This butterfly is widely dispersed over Europe, Asia, and Africa, but it is not found in England. It is of the same color as the last described specimen, but is not so large, measuring an expanse from 2.5 to 3.5 inches. The tips of the forewings are broadly marked with black, shading off to brown, crossed with a band of white spots. 4 of these spots are of a quadrilateral form, and much larger than the rest. The outer margins of all 4 wings are bordered with black, freely dotted with white. There are 3 black spots on the center of the hind wings of the female. The male has 4, the 4th, which is largest, being placed under the principal vein. The under is similar in markings and coloring to the upper side, but the white spots are more pronounced, and the tawny yellow somewhat paler. The apex of each forewing is moreover tipped with yellow, instead of being black like the upper side. The larva is very similar to that of the plexippus. It is somewhat smaller, however, has 6 fleshy horns instead of 4, and the transverse gold and black stripes are interspersed with white spots instead of stripes. It feeds gregariously with the above variety on the arbol de seda and appears at the same time, in the same locality, and in equal numbers. When it changes to the pupa state, it resembles closely the bright green chrysalis of its companion, only it is not quite so large. Danaus alciprates. Plate I, Fig. 3, 4, forces, and 3 day, which is able to rabbit. 1. This butterfly, a variety of the chrysippus, is rare in Teneriffe. It is found commonly in Africa and Western Asia and is a transition variety between the chrysippus and alcippus. It has whitish hind wings, rather silvery-looking, with orange markings within the black border. The hind wings have less white upon them than those of the alcippus. It is similar in all respects and habits, mode of feeding, etc., to the chrysippus, and is found gregariously with it. When kept collectively, about 1 in 50 of the chrysalides proves to be of this variety. The caterpillars of the 3 varieties of Danaus described are about 4 weeks before turning to chrysalides, and remain in that state from 2 to 3 weeks before emerging to the imago. Danaus stiripus v. Klugi. This is the 4th variety of the genus Danaus, and is authentically claimed as one of the Teneriffe butterflies, though by no means commonly found. It varies from the chrysippus in having no brown apical patch on the forewings, and it also has no band of white spots across them. It measures from 2.5 to 3.5 inches across the wings. It is not an inhabitant of England, but is commonly found in North Africa and Western Asia. Arginismia, cram, or Pandora. Plate E, figs. O, figs, 1 and 2. This butterfly is one of the most beautiful fritillaries, and is also one of the largest of Teneriffe butterflies, measuring in expanse from 3.5 to 4 inches. It mostly frequents woods and meadows, not often being met with below an altitude of 1,500 feet above the sea. It is found in South Europe, and is also met with in Africa. The time of its appearance commences in May, and continues during the summer months. The larva is purplish-brown, with black markings. It feeds on heartsease. The upper and underside differ greatly, as may be seen in the illustrations. The prevailing color of the upper surface is a beautiful bronze green, tinged with yellow on the forewings. The bronze green color is freely marked all over by velvety black oblong spots, dashes, and lines, the margin of each wing having a continuous scalloped line of black. The body and hind wings are very feathered and downy. The underside of the forewings is a brilliant pink, red, and black color, with an apical patch of green having yellow markings. The hind wings are green with a long irregular stripe of silver down the center of each, the stripe being fringed on the outer edge by 5 silver dots. There is a marginal silver band with a fine yellow line running along the outer edge of the hind wings. The body is green on the upper and buff yellow on the underside, the legs being of the latter color. There is not much difference between the male and female. Argynnis lithonia. Plate I, O figs, O fee, and 4. This exquisite butterfly, which is about 2 inches in expanse, is known in England, where it is accounted a great rarity, by the common name Queen of Spain, fritillary, and it is not very commonly found in Teneriffe. The caterpillar is a grayish-brown with a white dorsal line, spotted with black, and having 2 brownish lines on the sides. The spines are reddish and the legs yellow. It feeds on the heartsease, violet, etc. On the underside, the hind wings are brownish-yellow, with very large oval silver spots interspersed with smaller ones. The forewings have black spots of various sizes, and 5 or 6 apical silver spots. The butterfly is found mostly on high ground in barrancos, but also in fields and gardens from the months of March to September, though in some years it appears earlier. It flits quickly along the pass in the barrancos, settling at short distances, very often just out of reach of the net, and this liveliness often necessitates a long walk after a specimen. The antennae are furnished with a round, thick knob at the end. There is no very marked difference in the male and female. Pyramus atalanta. Plate II, fig. 7. This richly colored butterfly, known in England as the Red Admiral, is very rare in the Canary Islands. The ground color of the upper surface of the forewings is a velvety black, shading off to brown at the base. A bright red oblique band crosses the wings, and 4 large oblong white spots, with 4 or 5 smaller ones, are grouped on the apex. These again are bordered by several faint blue spots, quite at the tip. The hind wings are blackish-brown, with a broad red margin, in which are 4 black dots, and some blue spots are marked on the lower angle of the wings. On the underside, the forewings are black, with several steely blue lines, the red band across the center being clearly defined. The apex of the wings is brownish yellow, marked with white. The hind wings are most beautifully variegated with steely blue, black, and buff. The antennae are long and slender, abruptly forming a knot at the end, which is tipped with white. The larva is dusky green in color, with a yellow line running down its back and sides. It is sparingly colored with short stubby hairs, and is found gregariously on the nettle leaf. Gold spots are freely sprinkled over the brown chrysalis. The caterpillar stage lasts 5 or 6 weeks, the butterfly appearing in another 3 or 4. The larva suspends itself by the tail, often wrapping itself in a nettle leaf, on which it feeds. If the pupa is gathered from the nettles for breeding, it should be fastened in the cage in the same position, head downwards. Disappointment is often experienced in the number of butterflies that emerge from the chrysalis state, so many being attacked by ants, and CC. The caterpillars are found gregariously with the Teneriffe, which is the commonest species of Pyramis found in the islands. Among many reared, 3 only proved to be Atalanta butterflies. It is found in Teneriffe from January to June. Pyramis Kellerho, or Vulcania. Plate II, Fig. 6.6. This is the most common butterfly of the Pyramis genus found in the islands. It is similar in coloring to the last described, but it has a much broader red oblique indented stripe on the forewings. The white apical markings are not so many or large, and it has no blue spots on the tips of the forewings. The habits and locality of the caterpillar and chrysalis are so like those of the Atalanta that description is not needed. In rearing many specimens, 2 butterflies prove to have bright yellow on the hindwings in place of the red band. Whether they are a distinct variety or not cannot at present be positively stated. All 5. 5. See Appendix C. Appendix C. Pyramis cardui. Plate I, Fig. 5. This insect, which is the English painted lady, might at first sight be taken for a faded Atalanta. The caterpillar lives generally solitary on hollyhock, nettle, or mallow, curling itself up in a leaf. It is of a gray-brown color, thickly sprinkled with hairs. A yellow line fringed by reddish dots runs along each side. It is found in most localities up to a considerable elevation, from February till well on into the summer. The butterfly is of a tawny red color, shading off to brown at the base of the forewings, with dark markings and oblong black spots. The apex of the wings is marked and edged in white, similar to the Atalanta. The hind wings are of the same tawny red color, having a line of 5 round black spots running along each lower margin. The forewings are marked on the underside as above, the color, however, being redder. The hind wings are pale buff, olive brown, and white, having 4 or 5 blue-black eyes near the lower margin, the 2 center eyes being smaller than the others, which are circled by black and white. Its flight is very swift, and its erratic and rapid gyrations from side to side make it a difficult specimen to net. Pyramis v. Huntera. Plate I, Fig. 4, Phi. 4. This is a scarce variety in Teneriffe of the butterfly just described. It is commonly found in America, and some few insects have been taken in England. It is similar in coloring to the cardui, but somewhat brighter. The flight of the insect is steadier, and this, together with the brightness in color, distinguishes it from others of the same family when seen flying in company. It is found in barrancos and gardens, and has been netted in a locality about 600 feet above the sea near Orotava, together with the last 2 butterflies described. All 3 specimens were seen flitting in company, the collarho and cardui, predominating in number, with a few specimens of the Huntera dispersed among them. The upper surface is brick red, marked with black, the forewings having a dark apical patch, with several white spots. The hindwings have 5 blue spots, encircled by black near the lower margin. Beneath, the forewings are of a most beautiful red color, interspersed with black, gray-brown, and white, and having 2 eyes on the apex. The hindwings are of a lovely gray-brown tinge, liberally veined with white, having a whitish uneven band down the center. This band has two large eyes, with blue centers outside it. On the edge of the wings, three gray-blue lines are seen, making the tout ensemble a most exquisite reverse, and the greatest contrast to the upper surface. It is usually found from April to August. Though faded and small specimens were found earlier, the beauty of the insect is not seen till April. The caterpillar is brown, sparingly covered with hairs, and has bright red spots down its sides. It is rather larger than the cardui larva. Parage Syphioides. Plate EI, Fig. 5. This is not an English butterfly, though it is somewhat similar to the speckled wood, Argus paragigeria. It is very commonly found in the islands in most localities up to 3,000 or 4,000 feet above the sea. It measures in expanse from 2.5 to 3 inches. Those found early in the year are of a smaller and duller color than those netted later on. It is of a rich brown color, the forewings being freely marked with orange-yellow spots. The hind wings are plentifully feathered at the base and have a long dash of yellow down them, with 3 dark eyes near the margin, which is scalloped with faint white. The underside of the forewings is lighter in color than the surface, though similar in markings. The hindwings are of a uniform olive-brown shade, with a long, uneven silvery stripe halfway down the center. There is no very decided knob on the end of the antenna, which only thickens slightly towards the end. Epinephali hispula, or fortunata, alf, tui, soundbay, hauf. This brown butterfly resembles the English large meadow brown, E. genera, but is of a richer color and larger size, measuring in expanse about 2.5 to 3 inches. The female, which differs largely from the male in color and markings, is of an ashy brown color, the forewings being orange-tawny, leaving only an uneven marginal band of gray-brown. There is an apical eye of black with a small white center. The hind wings are ashy gray, with a marginal orange-tawny band. The body and base of the lower wings are freely feathered. The underside is similar in coloring, only lighter. The apical eyes are more strongly marked. Ebal hind wings are of an orange-brown tint. Ebal hind wings are of an orange band being slightly defined on this side. The male has no orange-tawny markings on the surface, only a slight shade of yellow being seen on the forewings, shimmering through the uniform brown color of the insect. There is a small black eye with a white central dot on the apex of each forewing. On the underside, the forewings of the male are orange-tawny, the black eye being larger and more pronounced than on the surface. The hind wings of the male are of a uniform olive-brown color. It is found in barrancos, meadows, and rough places, from the coast up to a moderately high altitude. From April to September, the male appears first in the greatest numbers, and towards June, the female is also found in great quantities. The caterpillar has not been observed. Hipparchia statilinus. Plate I, Fig. 7. This is a brown butterfly common in many parts of southern and central Europe, though not found in England. It is a rare insect in Teneriffe, and is only met with high up in the mountains, chiefly at Villaflor, and on the south part of the island, about July and August. It measures in expanse from 2 to 3 inches, and is of a uniform brown color, having a few white markings, which vary much in different specimens, on the forewings. 2 large brown spots are seen at the outer margin of each forewing, interspersed with small white spots. The hind wings are brown, shading to lighter color at the base. The underside is prettily mottled and streaked with gray-brown, the 2 dark spots seen on the margin being well defined. The larva and chrysalis have not been observed. Hesperia acton. Plate I, Fig. 8. This is a small skipper, the only member of this family found in Teneriffe. It resembles the English Lulworth skipper, and frequents damp places near the watercourses, though somewhat partial and scarce. In a limited spot near Orotava, it has been found in quantities, and at Tacoronte, where butterflies abound, some have been taken. The whole surface is of an orange-bronze color with slight brown markings. The antennae are short and club-like. The head is large and the body thickish. It is found from April till June, but solitary specimens are sometimes met with earlier in the year. List of butterflies found in Teneriffe. Name of butterfly. Remarks on localities, etc. 1. Pieris cheronthi, only in Canary Islands. HS2 Pieris wollastoni, Canary Islands and Madeira. 3. Pieris rapa, England, common white. 4. Pieris stapledice, England, rare. 4. 50 Aristopledice, England, rare. 5. Or 3. And EU. Or 3. 50 Ecloe charlonia. Or Sapta2 persix Aporia Kratagi, England, rare. 4. C. Bideni. All 7 Rhodocera cleobule, not in England, peculiar to the islands. 8. Callias edusa, England, clouded yellow. All Scallias versus Trashe versus tense and Don Callias versus tense ends past. Were I Donsi Callias versus tense versacrasni Don Pasticalia. England, very rare, tailed blue. All Stendon Lycana, Webiana, only in Canary Islands. First. 14. Polyomatus, or Cruciphinus, Phleas, England, common copper. 15. Thecla, ruby, England, green hair streak. 16. Danas plexippus, formerly Archippus, England, very rare. 117. Danas crucippus, England. 20. Danas alcipites, not in England. 20. Arginus maya cram, or Pandora, in Canary Islands and Africa and Europe. 21. Arginus lithonia, England, rare Queen of Spain, fritillary. Huntera, England, very rare, common in America. All 26 Paragesiodes, not in England. 27. Epinephali, Haspula or Fortunata, Alth. All 28. Hyatt. Anelsiat, Hybatia, Statuinius. Altrini, Hesperia, Statuinius. Altrini, Hesperia, Actaeon. England, local Lulworth skipper. ML, marked thus are illustrated. Part I. Moths. Acherontia atropos. Plate IV HT5. Fig. 1. This is the largest moth found in the Canary Islands, known as the death's head, very rarely met with in England. It measures from 5 to 6 inches in expanse. The ground color of the forewings is brown, varied with zigzag lines of whitish yellow and light brown. There is a white dot in the center of each, and they are dusted all over with minute white dots. The hindwings are orange, with 2 black marginal bands on the lower edge. The head is dark brown or black, marked with a pale brown skull. The body is orange, with a longitudinal band of bluish-gray down the center, increasing in width towards the base. 6 bands of black, broadest near the head, cross the body. The caterpillar measures about 4 inches in length, and is of a most gorgeous green and yellow color, alternate transverse bands of these colors running along the sides. It has 8 small eyes in a line below the transverse bands, and a horn on its tail. It feeds on the potato, the pupa, making a cell for itself underground, and appearing in the largest numbers between May and July. But as a fresh crop of potatoes is planted every 3 months in the Canaries, the caterpillars are found in small numbers all the year round. When bred in captivity, the pupa is delicate, quite 5 out of 10 dying in their cases. Sphinx convolvuli, or batatai. This moth is found in England and all over Europe. It is a large moth, measuring about 5 inches across the wings. All 4 wings are of a variegated gray-brown color, the body having a longitudinal gray stripe, increasing in width at the base, and 5 stripes of pink and black across it alternately. The antennae are somewhat longer and more slender than those of the death's head moth. They are feathered and gray in color, terminating in a sharp point. The insect is provided with a very long proboscis, which one sees it inserting into the center of the flowers at dusk. During the winter months, it is met with commonly in some years. The caterpillar, which measures 4 inches in length, feeds on the sweet potato in the fields and on the petunia and phlox in gardens. It is of a brown-gray color, shading to green on the back, having black longitudinal stripes along the back, and transverse black and white stripes surmounted by white spots at the sides. It is a night feeder, hiding itself under the leaves or in the ground at daytime and constructing the pupa case underground. It is delicate and difficult to rear in captivity, like the atropos. Teneriffe tithymali. Plate IV, Fig. 4. This beautiful moth is peculiar to the Canary Islands, although allied species are found over the greater part of Europe. 6. It expands from 3 to 3.5 inches. The forewings are silvery gray in color, having dark olive-gray markings and a long stripe of this color, increasing in width towards the body, from the apex to the base. The hindwings are rich pink, having a marginal band of dark brown and a fine white line on the outer edge. The antennae, which are white, are thick and feathered. The head and body, thickly feathered with white, are of an olive-brown color. 2 bands of black cross the top of the abdomen, which tapers off to a point, with bands of alternate white and olive-brown, slightly marked with black. The caterpillar is easily found on the euphorbia, where it feeds gregariously. It is a beautiful dark pink, the horn being of this color. The dark pink is interspersed with dusky green and grayish-black spots, and the caterpillar, when at full size, attains a length of about 4 inches. It is found from January till the end of May, but in the greatest numbers in April, whilst the euphorbia is in its prime. The roadside between Rambla and Ecode is a particularly favored spot. About 1 or 2 inches of dried earth prepared as already mentioned are required for the larva to make its slight case in, though when in a natural state it buries itself much deeper, and the pupa is difficult to find. Some were fed and reared on a species of milkwort. They thrived but eventually turned into small moths of a paler color than usual. The pupa varies much in the time of turning to the moth stage according to the weather, from 6 weeks, the usual time, to 3 months. Some caterpillars obtained in January did not become moths till the end of March. Others taken at full growth on March 15th effected their last change to the moth during the last week in April and first week in May. The pupa, when it first turns, is of a beautiful shaded green color with yellowish markings, but it changes to a uniform brown in a few days. The caterpillar is sometimes affected by a disease which consists of a small red fungus growing on the body, generally towards the tail. One small brood was entirely lost from this disease, which seemed to be contagious. As a rule, however, the larvae are easy to keep, and the chrysalides hatch well and strongly. When numbers are kept, an old wine case should be substituted for the smaller breeding cages already mentioned, the mosquito netting being used in the same way. A little sun is beneficial to them every day in the morning. When kept too long in the sun, however, they cease to feed, although, when in a natural state, sunny localities are most favored. They are not night feeders only. 6. See Appendix D. Appendix D. She, Rocampa celerio. Plate IV, Fig. 2. Sharp-winged hawk moth. All for you. This beautiful moth is somewhat allied to the last described, the color being similar, but the body is longer and more tapering. It is found in England and in most countries where the vine grows, on which it feeds. The forewings are grayish-brown, with a silvery gray stripe from the apex to the base. The outer lower margin is bordered by a similar stripe. The hind wings are of a rosy pink color, veined with, and having a marginal band of brown. The body is feathered and has a series of 5 short silver streaks down each side. The antennae are grayish-white, not so long as those of the tithymali. From 3 to 4 inches is the length of the beautiful bright green caterpillar. This has 2 dark and 2 light spots on its head and a horn on its tail. A faint yellow longitudinal line runs along each side. It is rather liable to the attacks of the ichneumon fly, and so it is as well to search for the eggs before putting it aside for rearing. This year, 1893, some were found in April, this being unusually early, as it does not appear generally till June, from which date until August it is very commonly met with in the vineyards. The pupa lies in a dormant state for 4 weeks and then turns to the moth freely and strongly. Macroglossa stellatarum, hummingbird hawk, moth, often is accents. This moth is common in England and most parts of Europe. Its forewings are brown, with faint longitudinal lines of a darker shade. The hindwings are orange-tawny, fringed with light brown. It measures in expanse about 2 inches. The head and body are brown, the abdomen spotted with black and white, rather liberally feathered. The antennae are brown, being thinnest at the base, and gradually thickening to the extremity. It is seen in the daytime, as well as evening hovering, with an ever-restless motion of the wing over flowers. The caterpillar is green, with a longitudinal white stripe and a faint yellow one under the spiracles. The time of its appearance is from March to September, but it is seen about in greatest numbers in June. Rhiparioids rufescens. Teneriffe, fig. 5. Fig. 5. This pretty moth is peculiar to the islands, measuring rather more than 2 inches across the wings. It is red in color, the hind wings being brighter than the forewings. These latter are marked with longitudinal dark stripes in the female, dark spots being substituted for the stripes in the male. The head is dark red, shading off to lighter red on the richly feathered body. The antennae are red, being thicker and more feathered in the male than the female. The caterpillars are brown, thickly covered with long silky hairs, and are found mostly in barrancos, feeding on the dock and sorrel singly. They are also found in gardens, feeding somewhat indiscriminately on cabbage or hollyhock. When kept in captivity, they can be reared on cabbage, and after attaining their full size of about 1.5 inches, they make a slight hairy cocoon under a thin covering of earth. The caterpillar stage lasts about 20 days. They are found in January and hibernate in the pupa state till well on in the summer, sometimes as late as October or November, though some taken in January were brought to England and turned to moths on the 24th of June following. After being kept for a time, the chrysalides become a very dark brown, almost black, so that there is a temptation to throw them away as dead, since they show so little life. But on opening the hard, stick-like skin, the creature is found to be quite fresh. Dusicida fortunata. Plate IV, fig. 11. In color, a dull gray moth. The forewings are ash-colored, variegated with whitish on the upper side. The reniform spot is rust-colored in the male and whitish in the female. The transverse lines are black and dentated, the submarginal line maculated. The hindwings are gray, with a slight lunule in the middle. The underside uniform gray. The body is less stout than the D. facilina, Linn. Or the abdomen is long in the male and longer in the female. The antennae are pectinated in the male, symbol in the female. The legs are thickly clothed with hair, the feet yellowish beneath. Although the caterpillar has not been described, it presumably has much the same characteristics as its allies and is probably grayish, with tufts of hair on its back. It feeds on the Pinus canariensis. This moth is allied to the English and European species, Dusicida facilina, dark tussock, but is probably peculiar to the islands. It has been described as being found in the islands of Palma and Hilo by Rogenhofer in the Verhandlungen des Kaiserlich Königlichen Zoologischen Botanischen Gesellschaft in Wien, Volume, he 41 for 1891, p. 566. The specimen illustrated was drawn from one of 2 presented to the South Kensington Museum by the Reverend O.E. Benthal, who found the chrysalides on trunks of the canary pine near Guimar, Teneriffe, about 2,000 feet above the sea, and as far as the author can ascertain, it has not before been recorded as occurring in Teneriffe. Deopia pulchella. Plate of E5, fig. 9. This beautiful little moth, expanding about 1.5 inches, is a very rare insect in Teneriffe at the present time, though 2 or 3 years ago it was found in great abundance near and along the coast during the spring months. 7. It has yellowish-white forewings freely spotted with black, alternated with oblong red spots, not so numerous. The hind wings are pearl white, having a small blackish-brown spot towards the top, and a marginal indented border of the same color. Ones in thorax and head are speckled with black and yellow. The body is light pearl gray. The larva is dark gray with a broad white stripe on the back and reddish streaks on the sides. This species is abundant throughout Africa, the south of Asia and Europe, but a very scarce insect in England. Don Ramon Gomez kindly supplied the specimen illustrated. 7. A single specimen was taken by the Reverend O. E. Benthal at Guimar in 1893. Pseudophia tierhaca, cram, wrongly called tier A. Plate of E, Fig. 3. Fig. 3. This is not an English species, but is met with in Europe and North Africa. It is not very commonly found in Teneriffe. The forewings are green, with a central reddish-brown spot, the outer margin having an indented band of the same color. The body and hind wings, richly feathered, are a beautiful straw yellow, the latter having a dark brown graduated band near the lower margin. It expands about 2 inches and a half. The larva is gray, with a pale gray stripe on the sides and black spots on the lower surface between the prolegs. Calocampa exolata, swordgrass moth. Moth, mine. This moth is an English species. It measures in expanse between 2 and 3 inches and is of a soft violet-gray tinge, the forewings having a variety of brown markings. The caterpillar feeds on the euphorbia and has been found gregariously with the tithymale on that plant. It is met with, however, on peas and potatoes and can be reared on the leaves of any of these plants. The larva is bright green, with 2 lines of black and white spots down each side of the back. These are bordered by a yellow stripe, sometimes, however, absent, and it has a broken red line on each side. The caterpillar attains a length of about 3 inches. Some were kept in the same breeding cage with the tithymale, but their habits were entirely different. When the exoleta caterpillar ceased to feed, it did not immediately attain the pupa state, but was restless and lively, remaining as a caterpillar from 6 to 8 weeks, gradually shrinking and losing its color, until it turned to the pupa. It made a fragile shell of fine earth, oval in form, and buried itself a short distance under the surface. Full-sized caterpillars, taken on the 20th of March, ceased feeding and turned to the pupa state from the 1st to the 20th of May, emerging to the moth on the 15th of June. In some specimens, the process of turning to the pupa took place on the journey to England in a box, the caterpillars being covered lightly with cotton wool. Teneriffe na pranuba. C. common yellow underwing, CR. Also CE, CR. This is a common moth in England and Europe, but is rather a scarce species in Teneriffe. It expands a little more than 2 inches. The forewings are dark brown, having a few irregular markings of a lighter shade. The hind wings are bright yellow, with a dark brown marginal band on the lower edge. The body is a somewhat lighter brown and the antennae are long and fine. The caterpillar is brown, and it feeds on a variety of low-growing plants in the barrancos, and may also be found on the potato. It commences to appear in the early spring. Plesia aurifera. Plate IV, Fig. 6. This moth is closely allied to the chrysitis, which is found in England, differing, however, in the shape of the gold markings. 8. Alders WS 18. The forewings have a bright golden marginal band of varying width across them, from the apex to the base. It is found in rough places and can be easily netted when hovering over clover flowers or similar low-growing herbage at dusk. The hind wings are gray-brown, shading off to a lighter tint towards the body. The antennae are long and fine. The caterpillar feeds on the tobacco plant and is found in barrancos, but it is most usually met with on potato plants. It envelops itself in a leaf, drawing it together with silk-like threads, and so forming a case in which it turns to the chrysalis. It is found very nearly all the year round, but is met with in greatest numbers during the spring months. Sass 8. Alferiki describes the Indian variety Chrysatina as a Teneriffe moth. Plosia tripartita, Hufen, Urtic, Huben. Known in England as the spectacle moth, it is met with in the daytime as well as at dusk, like many others of the genus Plosia. Its forewings are dark gray, varied with greenish-white in the basal and marginal areas. The subterminal line is marked below the costa with black arrowheads in front, and is bordered with deep black behind. It is common in the greater part of Europe and northern Asia. The larva, which is greenish-brown, has 2 white lines on the back, and slender white and green lines along each side above the feet. It feeds on nettle. Plutia circumflexa. Similar somewhat to the English gamma, or silver Y moth, but a distinct variety, and found largely in Europe. The forewings are dark ashy gray, with bronze markings, and have a pale golden mark in the middle resembling the letter R. The hind wings are brown, of a lighter shade towards the base. It measures in expanse about 2 inches. The antennae are long and fine. The larva, which is green with a yellowish stripe at the sides, feeds on the potato and other low-growing plants, and is found during the early spring months and well on into the summer. Pleucia areosoma. This is the 4th species described here of the large genus Pleucia. It is a much brighter golden-brown color than the last described specimen, measuring about 1.5 inches across the wings. The forewings are golden-brown, having 2 distinct gold spots about the center. The hind are of the same tint as the forewings, darker at the margin, and shading off lighter towards the base. It is found in India, but is not a European species. Helianthus armigera. This is a very rare moth in England, but is found over the greater part of the world. It expands about 1.5 inches. The forewings are a brownish yellow, with darker indistinct markings. The hind wings are lighter yellow in color, with a dark semi-lunar spot in the middle and have a dark marginal border. The antennae are long and fine. The caterpillar was found on the potato plant and proved to be one of the cannibal species. It fed occasionally on the food provided, but seemed generally to prefer its companions in captivity, feeding at night, and so had to be separated from them. The larva is reddish-brown in color, with a yellowish stripe on the sides, and it is very commonly found in Teneriffe during the early spring months. Helianthus dipsacea. This is a small moth, about 1 to 1.5 inches in expanse, and found throughout the greater part of Europe, northern and western Asia, and North Africa. It frequents high ground in the spring and summer, living in rough places and in clover fields. The forewings are of light olive-brown shade, with dark markings across them. The hind wings are dark olive-brown, fringed with yellow, and having 2 large yellow uneven spots about the center, with a similar one on the brown margin. The body is stout, the antennae long and fine. The larva is green or rust color, with white lines on the back and sides. Prodenia littoralis. A moth expanding about 1.5 inches, found in Africa, but not in England. It has brown-gray forewings with opalescent markings. The hind wings are of a shining opalescent white. The larva is brown, feeds on the potato plant, and appears during the early spring. The moths are seen a month or 6 weeks later. Those bred in captivity appear simultaneously with those out of doors. Paradroma saucia. Rather a fine moth inhabiting Europe, though not found in England. It expands about 2 inches or more. The forewings are dark brown, sometimes suffused with a reddish tinge at the upper margin. The hind wings are of a grayish pearl-white color, veined with brown, with a brown shade fringing the margins. The larva is grayish-brown, and feeds on the potato plant, where it is found during the late winter and early spring. The average time for turning from the larva to the moth stage is from 6 to 8 weeks. Tarace lucida. Plate IV, Fig. 8. IR dying 8. This is a small moth, not very commonly found in Teneriffe. It is met with by day along the coast and up to an altitude of 2,000 feet or more in rough rocky places in April and up to June or July. The prevailing color is a blue-gray. The forewings have a large square patch of white on the upper margin and a smaller dot of the same color towards the middle. The hind wings are fringed with white and have 2 or 3 patches of the same color along their margins. In the male, the white on both wings is increased towards the base. It is not an English species, but is found in Europe and along the Mediterranean. The larva is a green or brownish-gray, with 3 dark double lines on the thoracic segments, tufted, and with a white line on the back on segments 5 to 7, and with a dark stripe on the back and a whitish line on the sides of the remaining segments. Stera sacraria. A pretty little moth, about 1 inch in expanse, commonly found in the Canary Islands. It is widely dispersed over Europe and Asia, and is a rare inhabitant of England. The forewings are sulfur yellow tinged with bright red at the apex, and having a red line running from the tip to the middle of the inner margin. The hind wings are pale yellowish-white. It frequents rough places among short herbage, and is found on and near the coast in the early spring and during the summer. The larva is green, with a paler line on the back and a yellowish line on the sides. Spiracles, red. It feeds on low-growing plants. Omotostola sakari. A pale buff moth, measuring in expanse about 2 inches. The specimen described was netted at Guimar, Teneriffe, in May. It is somewhat common. The forewings and body are buff, the latter being rather richly feathered. The hind wings are cream white, the antennae are rather thick, of a medium length. It is not an inhabitant of Europe. The larva has not been observed. Hypena obsitalis. Not an English moth, but an inhabitant of South Europe, North Africa, and Asia. It measures in expanse about 1 inch. The forewings are brown, varied with pale yellow and black markings. The hind wings are gray, shading lighter at the base. It makes its appearance in the spring, and is very commonly found in dwelling houses or surrounding outhouses in the evening. The larva is green, with a white stripe on the sides. Hypena lividalis. A smaller moth than the last specimen described. The forewings are olive brown, violet-gray towards the margins. The two colors are separated by an oblique whitish line from the apex to the middle of the inner margin. ACH action, the hind wings are gray, shading off lighter to the base, and are veined with brown. It is not an English species, but is very commonly found in Teneriffe, on rough ground, among cactus and sea, in the early spring, at no great distance from the coast. It inhabits South Europe, North Africa, and Western Asia. Omphacodes divincta. Plate IV, Fig. 7. A pretty little sea-green moth, Geometra, found in South Africa, but very rarely met with in Teneriffe. It was netted in a rough place among cactus plants in April at dusk, about 500 feet above the sea level. It measures about 1 inch in expanse. The forewings and upper part of the body are of a beautiful bright sea-green color when first netted, but the insect quickly fades. The hind wings are paler green, and all forewings are fringed with white. The antennae are short and slightly feathered. This moth had not figured in any collection of Teneriffe moths as far as the author could ascertain. No observations have been made on the larva and pupa. Aspilates culinaria, Holt white, Fort white. Plate of E, Fig. 10 female. This moth is allied to the Aspilates gilvaria, but is probably an insect peculiar to the Canaries. It measures in expanse about 1 inch. It is of a pale buff color, the female being of a much intenser shade than the male. The hind wings in both sexes are much lighter in color than the forewings. The forewings of the female have a slate blue narrow band of color, extending from near the apex to the base of the upper margin, forming a semicircle. Within the semicircle and near the upper margin is a small slate blue dot. The hind wings have also a band of varying width and of the same color extending across them, and a slate blue dot is seen near the top of the upper margin above the slate band. The male has similar markings, but they are much paler and not nearly so well defined. The antennae of the male are feathered, of medium length. Those of the female are longer and finer. At first sight, this moth might be deemed a variety of Stura sacraria, Ardris sacraria. At the female was taken at Guimar about 1,000 feet above the sea. Several male specimens were taken near Orotava at a somewhat higher altitude. This moth, being unknown at South Kensington, has been named as above by the author. Bryophila, var. Ravula, Huben. A small moth, about 1 inch in expanse, with a slender body. The forewings are dark brown, with the base, tip, and inner margin whitish. The center of the wings is suffused with red, and 2 transverse lines of darker color cross them. The larva is blue with a black line on the back and a zigzag yellowish-red stripe on the sides, bordered below with black. It feeds on lichens growing on walls. It is not a British species, but is met with in southern Europe. Bryophila, Algaio e. Faber. This is a small moth, with the same characteristics as to size and form as the last described. The forewings are green, varied with brown and blackish in the position of the claviform stigma. It has dark transverse lines, and the hindwings are brownish-gray. The larva is bluish-gray, with a gray stripe on the back. It feeds on lichen, and inhabits Central and Southern Europe and Western Asia, but is a great rarity in England. Agrotis spinifera, Huben. This is a moth, somewhat larger than the last described, with rather a stout body. It is fawn color, the abdomen pale, and the margin of the forewings has several black spots. The hindwings are whitish. It inhabits southwestern Europe, but is not met with in England. Sesamia non-agrioides, Lef. All lefti, weight. The body of this moth is stout. The forewings are nearly rectangular at the tips, without any distinct pattern. The antenna and tongue are short. The forewings are grayish-yellow, with a black discal spot and an outer row of black dots. It inhabits Spain, North Africa, and Madeira, but is not a British species. The larva lives on the stalks of maize, corn, and sugarcane. Acidalia consolidata. One of the large genus of Acidalia, a small and delicate moth. The wings are yellowish-white, finely dusted with black. The forewings have 5 and the hindwings 4 brownish-yellow transverse bands. It expands about 1 inch. It is not a British species. Zonosoma pubellaria, Huben. A small moth, with the tips of the forewings pointed. The wings are grayish-yellow, finely and indistinctly speckled with purplish-brown, with a small brown central spot centered with white, a row of black dots beyond the middle, and often a dull red, zigzag central shade also. This is a very variable species inhabiting S. Europe, W. Asia, and N. Africa, but is not an inhabitant of England. The larva is very variable in color, being dull green, brown, or reddish. It feeds on the cistus, arbutus, myrtle, etc. Tephronia sepiaria, Hufen, Olivandae. A small moth, with narrow forewings, expanding about 1 inch. The forewings are ashy gray, finely dusted with a darker shade. The hindwings are paler, with 2 dark marginal bands. It is met with in Central and Southern Europe, but is very rare in Britain. The larva is brownish-gray, with a paler line and 2 rows of pale spots on the back. Eupithecia pumilata, Huben. The forewings are pointed, reddish-gray in color, and bordered by a brownish-red band. The larva is pale yellowish-green, with dark green or reddish-violet lines on the back, and a paler line on its sides. It feeds on the flowers of a great variety of plants, such as clematis, broom, convolvulus. It is widely distributed in Central and Southern Europe and W. Asia, but is not an inhabitant of Britain. List of moths found in Teneriffe. Name of moth. Remarks on localities, etc. Isfinges, Cephinges, she-isenses, and Reculi. She work as, with Everpeace than English, services, or personally. 1 Acherontia, Atrobos, England, Death's Head, ROC, CNC and Fortunate, Expanx convolvuli, England, convolvulus hawk moth. ROCNT, or CN Forchit, Dilophila, Tithamali, Asfrochit, or to the islands, Forchit, Orocampa cilario, England, sharp-winged hawk moth. 5. Macroglossa stellatarum, England, hummingbird hawk moth. Ephime or adzis. 6. Deopia pulchella european, England, rare. 7. Rhiparioids, rufescens, peculiar to the islands. Noctua. E. noctua. A 4. Marchin. It is as a play truth and personal. All the frame was happening, understanding with, in the DC. 9. Bryophylla, Ravula, not in England. 10. Bryophylla algae, England, rare. 11. Sesamia non-agrioides, Spain and Africa, Madeira. 12. Trifana pernuba, England, common yellow underwing. 14. Agrites spinifera, not in England, SW Europe. 14. Paridroma saucia, not in England, European. 14. 15. Amatostola sacheri, not in England. 15. Amatostola sacheri, not U. 16. Perdenia littoralis, not in England, S. Asia and Madagascar. 17. Calicampa exoleta, England, swordgrass moth. 18. Heliothis armigera, England, rare, cannibal. 18. Heliothis dipsacea, England. 1. 20. Heliothis dipsacea, England. 1. 22. Plusia eriosoma, not in England, India, India prison. 23. Plusia aurifera, peculiar to the islands. 24. Plusia tripartita, England, spectacle moth. Ross. 25. Taraca lucida, England, rare, S. Ross Steveni versus Europe. 19. Not in England, S. Europe, N. Africa. 4. 1. Otter. 23. Ross Steven Viperna lividalis, Ross Steveni. 4. 28. Hypena obsitalis, not in England, S. Europe, N. Africa. E. A. Geometrida. S29 Aspilates culinaria, probably peculiar to the islands. 30 Stera sacraria, England, S. Europe, Africa and S. Asia. S31 Omphacodes, 31 Omphacodes divincta, not in England, South Africa. 32 Acidalia consolidata, not in England, Europe. 33 Zonosoma pupillaria, S. Europe, W. Asia and N. Africa. 35. Eupithecia pumilata var, tempestivata, European. Microlepidoptera, we chas, over 2, certains that extremes on furra, and processors. 36 Bodes verbascalis, England. 37 Bodes polygonalis, England. 38 Bodes acinalis, England. 39 Asopia farinalis, dark form, England. 40 Centrostrigaria, wool, or Caremia, Sidaria, stout, probably peculiar to the islands. 41 Calimnia, Eriginia, wool. 40 Yar, to the islands. Marked, thus are illustrated. In addition to the specimens above described, a list of 21 more names of Teneriffe moths is appended, which have been written upon by S. Alfaraki in the Memoirs of N.M.M. Romanoff, Vol. V, 1889. Several of the insects in this list were collected by the author, but as they were mostly very small brown or gray moths, and of but little interest to the ordinary collector, a description of them has been omitted. The difficulty of identification without illustration also precludes their insertion in a work of the present character. Alfaraki. 1 Plutia chrysatina, 12 Crambus. Tercellus to Cosmophylla, Arosa 5, 13, Cryptoblabes. Nidiella, 30 Acidalia, Guancharia, Phycia, Ficulella, 4, Scoparia, Sedetica 5 Versella, 5 He, 15, Eucetia, Transversella, 5 Versella, Undalis Devenith, Cetina Ephesia, Calidella 17, Ephesia alutella, 7 Bedias, Meridionalis, 19, Cetomorpha, Bogotitella, 9, Botis ferregalis FSS carinalis, 90, Litha, Solanella, 10 Botis dorcalis, 90, Nitylus S107, Pterophorus, Monodactylus, 11, Duponchelia, fovealis. Appendix A. Mr. Scott Wilson, writing to the author of his visit to the Isle of Palma, states that the Queen of Spain, Fritillary, Argynnis lithonia, is very common in the meadows near the town of El Paso, 2,000 feet above the sea level in May. In the same month he noticed the clouded yellow Callias edusa in large numbers in the clearings amongst the pine woods. A few specimens of the large Fritillary, Argynnis maya, were secured by him at El Paso early in May, where the Vulcania was also found. Of these latter specimens, only 2 out of 100 proved to be of the British form Atalanta. The Bath white, Apieris daplodice, was common near Arguel. The Danais crisipus appeared rather uncommon, only a few specimens being taken near the Barranco del Carmen, not far from the town of Santa Cruz, and a few near Teneriffe. Specimens of the small blue, Lycaena webbiana, were taken near Arguel. In the middle of May, the large white Pieris chirinthi was commonly found on the large laurel trees at La Galga. The author believes that the same species of Lepidoptera are generally distributed over all the 7 islands, but that in Fuerteventura and Lanzarote, both of which are dry, sandy, and somewhat barren islands, they are not found in such numbers or variety. It is probable that different species of small African moths, some of which are enumerated on pages 93-4, may be found in Lanzarote, which is the nearest island to the coast of Africa, and which more closely resembles it in climate and vegetation, in greater numbers than in Teneriffe. The euphorbia, which grows so plentifully in most of the islands, is uncommon in Lanzarote, hence the D. tithomali, abundant in Teneriffe, would be scarce in this island. The lack of water in Fuerteventura, and consequent sparse vegetation, is doubtless the cause of the scarcity of Lepidoptera in that island, though the interesting occurrence of the insect, Euchloe charlonia, a North and West African butterfly, which has only once been recorded as having been observed in Teneriffe, is accounted for by the proximity of the island in question to the African mainland. This species probably occurs in Lanzarote. For the same reason, it will doubtless become dispersed over the remaining islands in time. Appendix B. Under date July 1893, the Revenot E. Benthal writes, "As to the blue webbiana, I found it in abundance at Guimar, about half a mile from the coast, where the barrancos shallow down before running into the sea. Most of the specimens were rather wasted, so I suppose the best time for them would be a fortnight earlier than when we went there, April." Appendix C. Several of the Teneriffe moths, although similar to English and European species, assume rather a darker insular form. The Tryphona pernuba, Calocampa exolata, and Asopia farinalis are examples of this. The Sterosaccharia is also met with marked with a much brighter red than in ordinary specimens, and showing great diversity in shade of color, from red to almost yellow. Anyone wishing to acquire more knowledge on this subject should refer to Observations on Some Remarkable Varieties of Sterosaccharia, with general notes on variation in Lepidoptera, by R. M. McLachlan, FLS. FLS Transactions of the Entomological Society of London, Sirs I Few 3, 43 FT 468, PL 23. Those who are interested in the subject and have sufficient time and patience would probably be well repaid for their trouble by the result of experiments in selecting and breeding together insects of the same species which exhibit any slight deviation in their markings and color. Thus, in rearing a number of the Pyrames calirho, several specimens have been observed to emerge from the chrysalis state with bright yellow instead of red markings on the margins of the hindwings. The white markings on the upper wings also varied somewhat. The Pyramis family would possibly lend itself freely to the production of new varieties. The Donius chrysipus is another species of butterfly which presents itself for experiment. By selecting the lighter hindwing variety Alcipoides for breeding, perhaps the Alcipus, which hitherto has not been found in Teneriffe, might be produced. Among the smaller butterflies, the Chrysophanes fluus and the Astrarch var. Aestiva have both shown deviation in color and markings, but these are much smaller, and consequently more difficult to rear. Moreover, they would not lend such an interest to the subject as the larger specimens. In the moths, the Deilephila tithomali caterpillars, if fed on a species of milkwort, evince a slight variety in coloring and size of moths as compared with those fed on euphorbia. They must, however, be fed on the plant from the earliest stage, as they only thrive on the food to which they have been accustomed from the first. Some of the earliest specimens are occasionally found on the milkwort, the eggs having been deposited thereon. Those found in January are more likely to thrive on this food than those met with later on, as the euphorbia, on which they generally feed, is not in its prime till the early spring. Great care, patience, and time are required for these most interesting experiments, but the natural advantages of the climate of Teneriffe would greatly facilitate any efforts made, as the variation in temperature is so slight, and consequently the breeding process can be carried on nearly all the year round. Experiments of this nature, which might pleasantly be made by those with whom time might otherwise pass slowly in Teneriffe, would probably prove of distinct value to students of biology. Appendix D. The Teneriffe daucus, allied to Lineata, a North American species, is said to occur in Teneriffe, but the author has not seen a specimen. If such a species is really found in the island, it is more probably D. livornica, which is common in South Europe and throughout Africa, and is found in Madeira. Either of the above species may be distinguished from D. tithomali by the white lines on the wings, but D. livornica has only 4 longitudinal white stripes on the thorax, whereas D. daucus has 6. Alphabetical index of genera and species. Abountees, the specific names, including varieties, are printed in italics. Acherontia, 64 Acidalia, 90 A50 Pia, Stiva, 41 Azeanalis, 87 Agratis, 89 Alcipatides, 48 Alcipaci, 48 Alcipaci, 48 Alzea, 89 Aporia, 34 Apparatus, 95 Archippus, 44 Arginus, 49 Armigera, 81 Azenalis, 94 Azenalis, 94 Azenal, Abetica, 38 Forbitatella, 65 Bocatatella, 95 Botais, 94 Bryophylla, RD8. Calidella, 95 Calerho, 54 Calocampa, 76 Calimnia, 94 Cardui, 54 Persolario, 69 Centra, 94 Persolario, 65 Cosmophila, 33 Quiranthe, 29 Churo, Compa, 69 Chrysippus, 46 Chrysitis, 78 Chrysatina, 78 Chrysophanes, 42 Circumflexa, 79 Cleobule, 35 Caleas, 36 Culinaria, 95 Crambus, 95 Esakiri Arcratagi, 34 Cryptoblabes, 95 Denias, 44 Deiplodice A, 32 Dasychira, 73 Dasyphira, Delephila, 67 Deopia, 74 Dipsachia, 81 Diventea, 86 Dodorcalis, 95 A. Dodoropus, 49 Duponchalia, 95 Edusa, 36 Elatella, 95 Aphasia, 95 Aphasia, 95 Epinephali, 58 Ariazoma, 80 Arizoma, each Lesia, 95 Euchloe, 33 Eupathetia, 92 Exoleta, 76 For Enalis, 94 For Egalis, 95 Ferruginea, 94 Ficulella, 95 Floralis, 95 Fortunata, 48 73 Fortillary, 49 Ajama, 79 Govaria, or 87 Gingnidiala, 95 Guancharia, 95 Helice, 37 Helioca, 94 Heliothes, 81 Helula, 95 Hesperia, 60 Hipparchia, 60 Ispola, 58 Hispola, 58 Meyer, 56 Hypena, 85 Interpuntella, 95 7 Protection, and 4, 5, 8 Taeklugi, 49 Lithonia, 51 Litha, 95 Litoralis, 82 Lividalis, 86 Livornica, 104 Lucida, Idasware, 83 Lacina, 38 Lacimon, 40 RD8 L. Lacimon, 40 Macroglossa, 70 Maya, 49 Meridianalysis, 95 Monodactylus, 95 Non-Agrioides, 90 Obsitalis, 85 Omatostola, 85 Omphacodes, 86 Alphar, Omphacodes Pandora, 49 Paradro, 57 Paradroma, 83 Phleus, 42 Pyrrhus, 29 Pyramice, 52 Pupu Pyranine, 52 Mighty 5 Plodia, 95 Plaza, 78 Poplu Canalis, 94 Polyomatus, 42 Prodenia, 82 Pronuba, 77 Pseudophia, 75 Terraphorus, 95 Pulchella, 74 Pyramice, Mighty 2 Pyramice, Thebri 4 Trainee Arapa, 31 8 Ravula, 88 Rhodocera, 35 Ruby, 43 rufescens, 71 rhiparioids, 71 Saccharine, 85 Saccharia, 84 Sakia, Aristasia, Aristopria, 95 Sapiaria, 91 Sesamia, 90 Cetamorpha, 95 Sessanella, 95 Sphinx, 65 Spinifera, 89 Distatilinus, Setidocria, 84 Stragaria, Aristatica, 94 Tisessi, Acetetica, 95 Tarace, 83 Tempus Divata, 94 Tenebrata, 94 Tephronia, 91 Tercellus, 95 Thecla, 43 Tirhaka, 75 Tirhaka, 75 Tithymale, 67 Transversella, 95 Tripartita, 79 Trifana, 77 Eucedia, 95 Undalis, 95 Urtica, 79 Vanessa, 20 Verviscalis, 94 Vulcania, 54 Webiana, 39, Wollastonii, 30. Xiphi-oides, 57. Zonosoma, 91. Description of plates. Plate I. Fig. 1. Pieris wollastonii. 2. Pieris chironthi, underside. 3. Rhodocera cleobulae. 4. Rhodocera charlonia. 5. Coleus edusa, female. 6. Coleus vir. Helis, the Cios edusa, Chios ed, Fiar a, Chios n, Chios 7, Leoseses, Chios ed, Dios n nink, Webiana, underside. Plate I. Fig. 1. Denias plexippus. 2. Denias crucipis. 3. Denias elcipites. 4. Pyrames huntera. 5. Pyrames cardui. 6. Lycana, Astrache var, Astiva. 7. Hipparchia, Statilinus. 8. Hesperia actaeon. Plate II. Fig. 1. Arginus Maya or Pandora, upper side. 7. 2. Arginus Maya or Pandora, underside. 4. Arginus Lithonia, upper side. 4. Arginus Lithonia, underside. 4. Arginus Lithonia, underside. 5. Parargizifioides. 6. Paramis Vulcania or Calarho. 7. Paramis Atalanta. Plate EV. Fig. 1. Acherontia atropos. 2. Chirocampus alario. 3. Pseudophia tirhaka. 4. Dealephila tithymale. 5. Rhiparioids rufescens. 6. Plusia aurifera. 7. Omphacodes divincta. 8. Tarace lucida. 9. Deopia pulchella. 10. Aspalates culinaria. Sacadali. Rocca. Sacadalia. Fortunata. 30. Malia. Fortunata. Thanks for listening to The Butterflies and Moths of Teneriffe by A. E. Holt White.